Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Reed Davis. How you doing?
Fine, Len. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thanks for being on. I'm super fascinated. I have so many questions for you, but I think I want to establish a definition first. So my audience and I understand, what does functional diagnostic nutrition, what does that actually mean?
That's the name that I gave to a system. It's a holistic health building system where you look at all the underlying causes and conditions, because we don't want to diagnose and treat. We don't want to do that. That's what doctors do, and that's what, when I started 25 years ago, that wasn't working for any of our clients or patients. So it's about investigating the underlying causes and conditions, and then applying the principles of nurture, all the things that are involved, principles of health building within diet and rest and exercise and stress reduction and supplementation. So I have some acronyms I use for that, and it's pretty fascinating.
So is having nutrition as part of it, is it your concept that the food and the things that we put in our body are affecting the response our body kind of communicates back to us?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's almost nothing you could do.
You know the moment when you realize that your high hit you way harder than you expected. Your heart's racing, your head's spinning, and you wish that you could hit an emergency stop button. Guess what? There's an emergency stop button that's available now, or at least a pause. It's called Anti.D.E.S.S. Anti.D.E.S.S is a fast-acting THC-free formula and designed to minimize the unwanted effects of high-potency THC, taking you back to being yourself and fast. Whether you're stuck on a couch or spinning in your head, Anti.D.E.S.S helps you to reset, restore, and rebalance. Find out more at antidotes.com.
That's a stronger epigenetic effect than eating and food. And of course, it really matters. Food has an effect on every cell, tissue, organ, system. The entire organism is affected by food. And it's not food so much as who's eating it. So you talk about personal, what's personal is your diet, because there's no one diet that's right for everybody. There's no food that's right for everybody. And I've run thousands and thousands of labs testing on people for food sensitivities. And you'd be really surprised what someone's sensitive to. It could be carrots, it could be broccoli, it could be beef. I would hate that one. But so there's no food that's right for everybody, but there are some foods that are wrong for everybody. We don't like seed oils. We don't like these anything with excess sugar and stuff like that. There's a lot of chemicals in our food now, so we try to avoid those things. So I have a system for everything. I started 25 years ago in an office, and I have to tell you, Len, I didn't know anything, but I had a lot to learn, but I had nothing to unlearn. So, I wasn't a physician, but I was told that I had to be the last person the patients needed to see. Reed, you just got to stop this cycle of trial and error that everyone was caught in.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great point that you brought up about the food being individualized, because for example, I did my microbiome test. Now, I have a genetics company, so I do genetic testing and analysis and all that stuff under EndoDNA. So everything you're saying resonates really well with me, because everything is personal, like the podcast says. But I mean, everything, including the food, but you're absolutely right. And you think about some things being, good for you, nutritious. So when I did my microbiome test, one of the things that came up is bell peppers are inflammatory to me. Mm-hmm. Bell peppers, I mean, what a great source of vitamins and nutrients and such a great food. But for me, it's inflammatory. So how do you know that? Well, you have to figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So it's a great point.
Yeah, well, we do a lot of food sensitivity testing. So if I could give you just a tiny bit of background,
Yeah,
I
please.
started in the office 25 years ago.
Well,
And
Reed, let me ask this question this way. Let me build
okay.
your, because I was going to ask you next question is
Oh,
sort of
okay.
your origin story. So I want to start with, where did you grow up?
In Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Okay. And let's talk about your family dynamic also. Were your did you have your parents were together? Did you have
Yeah,
siblings?
I had great parents. I just had a very happy childhood playing hockey and going duck hunting and fishing and stuff. We lived in what was rural area then. It's now been completely overgrown. It's a suburb. But yeah, Toronto, when I was born in 1953, was a decent town, but we lived on the outskirts. I had an older brother, younger sister, and we were quote unquote normal. But
Yeah.
normal in Ontario means you just work all the time. They just, I mean, they're the most industrious people that I've ever known. That whole clan there.
So when you were growing up, you already said you were into sports. You did outdoor activities, duck hunting. Everybody plays hockey, I think, in Canada. Anyway, so that's a given. But what were your interests? Were you into math? Were you more artistic? Like,
Yeah,
what were you as a kid?
believe it or not, really was into artwork, and I would spend Saturdays when other kids were doing some sports. I always played hockey, but during the other seasons, I really went to art classes. My
Hmm.
mother was kind of an artist. And I went that way. I had an older brother who was all complete jock,
Yeah.
100% jock, played every sport, was captain of every team, and he was a much bigger guy and stuff like that. But no, I really did like art classes.
So when you were growing up, was there an idea like this is sort of what I want to do with my life? Did you focus on being an artist, or were you sort of said, yeah, that's a nice hobby to have. You can't really make a living in that. Why don't you become an engineer or something like that?
Yeah, that came later. No, I was pretty much allowed to, as long as I did good in school, and I always did good in school, until I moved to North Carolina. So I moved from Toronto, which is
Mhm.
a metropolitan style area, and to this really small town in North Carolina where they hunted and fished there too, but it was different types of game, different ways of doing things. And I wasn't very good at sports. They didn't play hockey there. They played, basketball and some football that, American football. Anyway, I just turned to art then. I was kind of forced into, well, what do you do best? So art was my exceptional subject. Kids would challenge me to draw certain things, and I could had a big sketchbook all the time. So I did that for years, even when we moved to Chicago after 2 years, and I went to a really good high school there, New Trier. A lot of people would know that. Um, and and I again was in art. Everything was painting and sculpture and drawing and all that. And then my dad did start to work on me. You're never going to make any money doing that. So I enjoyed the drawing and sitting at a table, and so I got into drafting, architectural drafting. He approved of that. Well, that's at least you're still using a pencil and drawing, but you can make a few bucks with that. And I went to college for that. I went to technical illustration, engineering drawing, and things. So I kind of shifted from this pure artwork, the creative stuff.
So how does like healthcare come into your life?
When I was 19,
Mhm.
I was a hippie. I'd left home at 18, and I was buying my food at a food co-op. They didn't have Whole Foods and Sprouts and all these places. It was just we had food co-ops, and you could buy bulk and everything. And I bought a book in there. They had a book section called Healing Ourselves. So I was 19, Healing Ourselves. And that was a nice big book. So you could roll your weed on it. You could
Yeah.
clean the seeds up back then when you had to clean seeds. So that was on my
I
coffee
used to
table.
do it on the gatefold albums. Like you open
Yeah,
up the
albums.
album and you have the C's in there.
So I have this big book, and it was on my coffee. All my friends read it. We all read this book, Healing Ourselves, and it introduced me to the Eastern philosophy of yin and yang and things like that. So I've always had that interest, and I didn't do that for a living until I was way into my 40s. I actually went into environmental after the drafting and all that. I just kind of fizzled out of it. Things like normal. But I got into, I went back to school in my 40s for environmental law and conservation. And I graduated as a paralegal and went right to work in the recycling business in Southern California, where I'd moved with my wife and kid and stuff by that time. But so that's what got me into saving the planet. I mean, air, birds, water, trees, bees, just trying to do some good in the world. And by the way, it was hippie lawyers who, after the passage of it was called CERCLA and created the EPA. When Nixon was president. Remember, we're old guys, right? At least I am. So I remember all those days, and these hippie lawyers started suing the government and big businesses, and we cleaned up. I lived in Cleveland for a while, and I remember moving there. In 1968, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. In environmental law, that's a huge thing. It's like really memorable. The Cuyahoga River is on. It was so polluted, the river caught on fire. And the lake was dead. Lake Erie was the mistake on the lake, they called it. Well, today, all these years, it's been so cleaned up. It's now the walleye capital of the world. You can go there fishing, you can catch the fish, eat the fish. So it's really amazing how much the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act helped the planet. And I cut the tail end of that and went into the recycling business. And I made a ton of money learning the laws and how to do that. We sold a lot of aluminum, and it became for me after a while not so much about saving the planet, but about how much aluminum are we processing. And I didn't like it anymore. I just couldn't. I was a senior vice president, and I opened up 60 recycling locations in California. We did really well, but it wasn't emotionally rewarding at all after a while. And so I started wondering about people. So it went from environmental law, conservation, and I would say if you see enough dead fish and dead birds, you start wondering about people. What's the environment doing to people, including me? And I was healthy. I'd never really been to the doctor, but I changed jobs. My son, who was a high school superstar athlete, says his dad, and he he was going to this wellness center. I was getting him chiropractic and massage therapy, and man, I started listening to the doctors in that office, and I was just blown away with what good they were doing. And I said, I want to work in this business. And I started again, 1999, and I just got really lucky with who was there and the mentors that I ended up with. And then I'm a pretty hardworking guy. So I ran more labs than any 5 doctors put together for 10 years. And I learned a lot. That's how I developed the system that I teach now.
Was there a specific moment that you saw that motivated you to say, you know what, there's a gap. Like I see the way healthcare is working right now. I have enough information I gathered, but I don't know what to do with this. I can't tell somebody to go to a doctor because the doctor won't know what to do with the information I gathered. Was there a tipping point that started creating this for you?
The first one was, as I said, I got sick of that other business, and but I still wanted to do good in the world. As a Boy Scout, you do good in the world. That's your job. You have to find something that's purposeful. And I was just observing things in this office, and I wanted to work there, and they gave me a job. And in 3 weeks I was running the place because I'm a very good organizer. And at the same time, I got invited to go to a nutrition class, and the reward was that, hey, if you go to this nutrition class, you'll become a nutritionist, and you can work on our patients in between your classes. And man, and that's what I did. And that's when I fell in love with the face-to-face, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Smith. Now, the moment that you're talking about was developing, or, I was just so intrigued, and I knew I could, again, do very well, a good businessman. I could make a living doing this. Don't need that other crap, corporate crap, So, so everybody coming in the office had seen 6, 8, 10 practitioners already, and they weren't better yet. And Lynn, I said, that's a ripoff. What a ripoff. I can't believe it. Now, I'd never really been to the doctor. I was totally, quote unquote, healthy. I had a few boo-boos from motorcycle accidents and some sports. I did jujitsu and wrestling, and kickboxing and stuff. But I didn't know what it was, the Western medicine. I didn't know anything about it. And one day I'm out riding my motorcycle, and I'm thinking about these people at the office, just going, it's horrible. I can't believe they've seen this, and they'd spent a lot of money too.
Mhm.
And I said, the moment came when I said to myself, I'm going to be the last person they need to see to get well. And it was kind of dumb because I didn't know anything. And I'm not a physician, I have no medical training. But I went back to the office and I was lucky to find these doctors who were creating their own laboratories, these alternative laboratories. Now they call it functional medicine. It's actually much more common. But back then it was pure quackery.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the saliva, stool, urine testing, and because everyone was going to the doctor getting a blood test, and the ones coming into our office, they were so frustrated, and the reason they went from one practitioner to the next, they were told nothing's wrong with them. It's all in your head, and that just again, so these moments like that were what put me like a dog on a bone for what is the real reason people are sick. What are the underlying causes, conditions? Thank God I had great mentorship. And I'll just finish with saying, and I knew how to get volume. I knew how to get the business. I knew where the bread was buttered, and I wanted to help people. So I ran thousands and thousands I worked there 10 years sorting out underlying causal conditions.
So what are some of the most common like health challenges that people face today where they would come to you or
Yeah,
implement their
if you
practices?
if you do a search on the AI search engines, what's the most common reason people seek out alternative health? The number one thing is still pain, and but then it's chronic fatigue, things like fibromyalgia and anxiety, and sort of mental emotional stuff. And it goes down. You got digestive, and you got hormonal problems. You got all these things. And so, but remember, I wasn't a physician,
Right.
and I had a law background at that point, and I knew you can't diagnose or treat anything, but I could look for underlying causes and conditions. And I'll summarize that 10 years on the investigative side as hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system imbalances. And that's an acronym that spells hidden. And it was pretty much hidden. Matter of fact, most practitioners of the day weren't even looking for the hidden underlying causes and conditions. They're very good at diagnosing. Oh, that cluster of symptoms, you're tired, fatigue, overweight, thinning hair, can't lose the weight, and you got constipation. That's thyroid. That's classic thyroid presentation, right? Show it with that. Oh, it sounds like thyroid. And the physicians of the day, again, they were like, okay, test the thyroid. Yep, pat myself. Found your problem, you're hypothyroid. Here's your medication. Come back in 3 months. Now, I couldn't do that. Couldn't write a prescription, and no one wanted that. They wanted, well, what's really wrong? Because I'm tired of all these diagnoses. I would hear that. Okay, so we would run these other types of labs and just look at hormone balance. And I can tell you anything you want to know about it. And then that leads to problems with the immune system. And that leads to problems with digestion because of you mentioned microbiome. That's where most of your immune system is. So you're not able to digest and break down food and assimilate it. And so, I did a lot of study in anatomy, physiology, biochemistry. I love that stuff. From the law training, I could take very complex stuff and make it easy for the people sitting in front of me. Again, wide-eyed, teary-eyed, sometimes people. And I had to explain it to him. Here's what's really going on.
So if I were to contact you as somebody who has some issues with, sleep, let's say I'm not really sleeping well, uh, and then wake up in the morning, I feel achy, and it's like every single day I'm on this hamster wheel. What do you do? Do you send me to labs first? Like
Yeah,
what are the steps?
first of all, there's only you and a million other people who show up like that, right? So you can go down the list. And so stress is the number one killer. It's the number one source of all disease. And it all starts with stress and what it does to your ability to stay balanced, catabolic, anabolic, we call it. You can measure those hormones. So yeah, I would measure that. I'd want to know what state are you in. Again, I'm not trying to diagnose because you mentioned can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, or wake up too early and don't feel right. So that could be called insomnia or sleep disturbance. We don't label anything. We just know that that's part of your lifestyle that's not working for you, and it will have causal factors. So we would start with the hormone testing and look at not just that catabolic, anabolic, cortisol and DHEA, but we look at the sex hormones as well, because a lot of symptoms are, you know, that's where a lot of symptoms come from. That gets out of balance. You have stress, catabolic, anabolic. Your body's actually breaking down.
Mhm.
What breaks down is sex hormones. The next thing is the immune system. So we do 5 labs on every person, Len, to answer your question.
Are
Because
the labs like blood draws, urine, saliva, all the above?
yeah, at home, even some of the blood work, yeah, they're mostly at home. So there's saliva, urine, blood, stool, and hair. And you can see I
What
must
do
have
I
done
do
a
with
lot
that?
of testing.
I can't qualify
You can
for the
actually
hair
you
test.
can actually use body hair, but so you're taking these submittals, specimens, and you're analyzing it for the hormone levels and how's your immune system working? Is it overactive or underactive? And then if it was active, you'd have to ask, well, what's causing that? Is there like a microbiome check? Is there bacteria, funguses, parasites, and so on, biofilms and all these things? So I could show you, and in my training, that's what I teach is how the dominoes fall so that we're not diagnosing one thing and treating that. That's practicing medicine without a license. We look for all the causal factors that we can identify, call them healing opportunities. And then the other part of our program kicks in, and that's called the D.R.E.S.S for Health Success System. And I'll be happy to explain more. But your question is an excellent one. What do you do? We run tests because otherwise we're guessing. And we don't guess at which test to run. We know it could be all of these causal factors. By the way, they're all interacting with each other and having an effect on each other. And there's not enough labs to measure all that stuff.
I mean, like after a while, you start probably coming up with like hidden stressors that
Yeah,
are within your body. So there's a delta and there's like I don't want to say normal, abnormal because everybody, as you said, is different,
yeah.
but you get all this input information. What action do you, because like one of the things, and I'll talk about like DNA companies, like you do your DNA test, it comes back with a predisposition to blank.
Right.
Okay, I have a predisposition to blank. What do I do about that? Do I mitigate the epigenetic expression or do I just sit there and realize, oh shit, you know what? I'm fucked. I have this predisposition
And
to something. What do
well,
I do? So these are the things that I
it's a
think,
great. I love this question.
yeah, yeah. So what do
Well,
you do?
the thing is, genetics are part of the problem because you have parents and they had parents and there's all feeding down. You got the genes. You've got the genes. But what people smarter than me have said, and I agree with, genes are about 8% of your problem. You can't change your parents, right? So what does it really matter? What matters is called epigenetics, and that is the influences that do have those genes turn on, turn off, or express themselves is a better way to put that. So gene expression is really the key, and that's affected by our environment and our daily habits and everything that could be included in there. So I came up with a program because we do some DNA testing sometimes when we're really looking for a hidden, you know, a distinction in a person, but mostly it's epigenetics. That's probably 92% of the problem. I've got some other people you could interview would back that up 100%. So what do you mean epigenetics? Well, the program that I developed from years and years being in the office and having to tell people, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, you're coming in the office 3 times a week. You're getting your chiropractic and acupuncture and the modalities and the different things and some advice and things. But what are you doing at home? Coming in the office isn't what's going to heal you most effectively. It's only helpful. So it's how you live. What do you mean? Okay, well, what do you eat? What time do you go to bed? Get up. How do you sleep? What kind of exercise are you doing? Some people are over exercising. Most people are under exercising. But, and then the stress reduction became a big part of it. Like, what stressors are you under? Mental, emotional, spiritual, psycho spiritual. You got physical, like me, I've got body parts that hurt a lot from a well-used body, just being kind of overused in certain areas. But so it became diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation, which spells D.R.E.S.S. So we have a now trademarked D.R.E.S.S for Health Success program. And all my trainees, all my graduates know, first run the labs, you find out what's wrong in those 8 hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification. What are the healing opportunities? How do you fix it? Epigenetic program, the D.R.E.S.S for Health Success. If that doesn't fix what's wrong, there is always the chance that there is a medical underlying, downward spiraling condition that's downward spiraling so fast that the observations we make are hard to capitalize on. We need time for the body to heal. So anything that just requires healing, that's where the functional diagnostic nutrition, I could call it foundational data-driven nurturing, FDN. There's lots of ways to look at it. I just named my first webinar or seminar ever. It was live. It was a workshop, and none of those people would go away after I gave it. And now we've trained, over 4,000 people.
It's amazing. I definitely want to get more proficient in this because, I do a lot of one-on-ones going over people's genetics and epigenetics. One of the things that people ask me about is supplementation. And I think, in your program, some of the things you talk about is, supplementation versus dietary modifications and lifestyle changes. So if I'm going to eat crap, but I'm also going to take all my vitamins, can I fix my epigenetic expression, or do I have to modify, my lifestyle first?
When you tell me how you can walk in 2 directions at the same time, then I'll answer that question for you. So the idea of supplementation, I explain it like here's D.R.E.S.S. Now, so diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. Supplements are only one part. They're maybe 20% of the program, and they can be very helpful. You don't want to leave anything out in your lifestyle program. You can't stay up late till 2 o'clock every morning watching TV, if you have to get up and go to work. Hopefully you got something productive to do. So there's nothing more important probably than D.R.E.S.S. Diet we agreed in the very beginning was a very strong epigenetic influence on expression of genes. Probably nothing more effective, but sleep is important, exercise. And then the stress reduction is probably the next. We find the hidden stressors. We find the food sensitivities, the bacteria overgrowth, the parasites and viruses and a lot of funguses, and then the biofilms they create and what that does to your immune system. So we find all these downward spirals and help people with epigenetics only, no drugs. We are fully accredited by the American Association of Drug-Free Practitioners, my course, and our graduates. And so, yeah, it's not about what you take for something. Because I learned that, to answer your question about supplements, Len, that's how I learned nutrition in the first place. It was just all about supplements, and it was kind of bullshit, because people would take them for a month, And if they felt better, they think they were cured. And then, but when as soon as they quit taking them, now they're back to how they were. Now, if they didn't work, they thought it was all bullshit and wouldn't do it anymore. So,
I just think it's fascinating, and I don't mean to interrupt what you were saying, but
yeah,
it's we have this two different systems, two different healthcare systems that are, as you said, walk in opposite directions. They seem to me that they're walking in opposite directions. If I have pain, or you brought up pain, and I go to a regular doctor, is going to say, "Oh, yeah, let me send you out. You may have a bulging disc. You may have, you know what I'm going to do? I have a shot for that. I'm going to shoot it for you so you don't feel the pain." And I always think to myself, I went to physical therapy school, so I have a little bit of anatomy, physiology, expert. I never worked in a day of my life in that, but I understand. I'm like, wait a second, the pain is telling me something. If you're trying to use an analgesic to turn off my feeling, then I'm not communicating acting. My body's communicating that. So this notion, I'm going to ask you a question regarding insurance and all that stuff, because it seems to me like medicine is focused on, let's address the symptom. I'm going to feel better. That means I'm good. And now my insurance covered that. It paid for my shot or paid for my pill, and I'm feeling better. It didn't take care of the underlying condition that you're talking about that may be causing that feeling of pain. Just because I have elbow pain, it doesn't mean I hit my elbow. I didn't do anything. You talked about stress. Well, guess what? I may have an overactive immune response and it's manifesting itself in my elbow, but it's coming from somewhere else. And if you're going to continue this cycle, you're never addressing the root cause of the issue that's creating the feeling of the pain in the first place. How do you battle that with, regular doctors that are there to get you through the conveyor belt of medicine?
yeah, it's a good question. It's pretty complex, but people don't like pain, and so they want relief care.
Yeah.
Right. So we have relief care too, naturopaths and holistic practitioners. We deal with people like, for instance, we know that hot flashes and night sweats in women is a pretty tough symptom that can be very upsetting to a person. And because it makes you not sleep, now you're tired and you get all the sort of downward spiral that comes from that. So is there anything wrong with suggesting to that person something that would help them with their hot flashes and night sweats? Even though it's caused by stress and hormonal imbalances, sometimes far upstream, but it's creating this estrogen, say, deficiency and or imbalance with progesterone. And so is there anything wrong with giving that person something to help with their night sweat? There's nothing wrong with that. And physicians happen to be really good at it. But if you said, no, and that's an easy one. So there's other symptoms, which are signs that something's wrong. If all you do is that relief care and you don't go keep looking for the underlying causes and conditions, if those underlying causes and conditions are downward spiraling, then the relief care won't work anymore.
Yeah.
And you'll need bigger and bigger. We call it the hammer, just the bigger hammer, because they're getting worse. People are coming to us, they're already self-medicating. They're drinking way too much coffee and other stimulants, and then they're using alcohol to relax at nighttime. That's self-medicating. So there's something wrong. And it revolves around fatigue and mental fogginess and acuity and things like. So there's an underlying cause or condition for everything. And you are absolutely right. By the way, it's very interesting you had that background into physical therapy and stuff, because I've studied that as well. And it's fascinating what you could do for a person just by body work, just by rebalancing. There's the things like fascial counterstrain and stuff. You just, all of a sudden the pain's gone. Well, because you went and rebalanced the fascia and muscles that were causing the pressure on nerves. And chiropractic does that too. Take the pressure off nerves, you feel better. But can you fix it permanently is the question.
Yeah, I mean, you made a great point, and I just want to emphasize, like the female hormone health, for instance. So, my company is one of the first, if not the first, it's called Menopause Biotype. We do a genetic test for female hormone health to show them maybe they have a predisposition to hot flash severity. So getting ahead of that, functional medical professionals, let's make sure that doesn't manifest itself. So what can we do? You already mentioned hormone optimization. So let's optimize your hormone levels, personalized supplementation, different types of nutrients, all the different things that you do because you already know that you have this genetic predisposition. And you're absolutely right about pain. If I'm getting headaches, if I have a headache, I want to take something for my headache because I want to feel better. But at some point, we as a society have to raise our hand and question. I'm getting a headache. I'm taking an ibuprofen or acetaminophen. It's helping me with my headache. But don't you want to know why? Then you sometimes want to ask yourself, well, why is this happening? Yes, I'm feeling better. I don't want the pain. So I need to go through and do some homework. I'm gonna give you a quick story, then you can comment on what I just said. I got invited to a fly in the wall that had a chance to participate at some point with some of the biggest payers and insurance companies, like the Blue Shields and the United Healthcare. They're all talking about what the biggest issue is that they want to address in the upcoming year. And the thing were focusing on is the rise in diabetes. They were saying this is their next focus to try to address this. And this is probably before the Ozempics and all those other things were that prevalent. But GLP-1 agonist and all that stuff. So they were talking about what can we do to reduce the cost of insulin for our patients. This is their number one concern. Let's see where we can break it down to pennies a day. And I'm sitting here I'm not pulling out my hair because I don't have any, but maybe pulling my beard hair. I was like, I don't understand. Somebody's gonna ask this question. I know somebody's gonna ask this question. Nobody asked the question. So I raised my hand. I said, what are all of you collectively or individually doing to help with preventative? So the diabetes doesn't actually express itself, so we can mitigate, so we don't have to worry about the cost of insulin, so we can actually focus on modifying lifestyle so we don't express that. And they started talking about, in our insurance, we have gym programs that we subsidize and all that stuff, but there is no plan. And part of it, maybe there's a business aspect to selling more insulin. I'm just putting it out there in the universe.
No, you can't think that. So there's an old expression I've observed many, many times, and in our field it's rampant. Follow the money. If you follow the money, you're going to see what causes disease, because it's the things that are legal in the United States that have been banned in other countries. And by the way, even though I was born in Canada, I am a true American. I love America. I never want to live anywhere else and things. But we do allow a lot of stuff that isn't allowed other places, like advertising medicine on TV, and the stuff that goes in our food and in our drinks and things like that, and the fact that we're allowed to advertise really harmful stuff to children. Things, like it took them a long time to try to keep cigarette ads away from kids. And they still seem to have some sneaky ways of introducing flavored, vaping. It's designed to make money, and they know how to sell this stuff, and they get people addicted to it. So we all know all that. I don't think we would talk about that, but so education is, and I think things might change in this country. Hopefully, I have some hope for the new people in charge and stuff, but
we can talk about RFK. It's exactly.
I think there's an opportunity here to do some really significant changes and change the health. He wants to make America healthy again.
Yeah.
So do I. I've been on that mission for 25 years, and kind of on the ground floor of a lot of they call me OG now, but the real OGs, I thought they meant old geezer. What's OG? Old geezer? No, you're the original gangster. No, I'm not. The guys I learned from were the original
Yeah.
gangster. A lot of them are past now. But they were these old doctors who'd made their money and they didn't owe anybody anything. They were out of the box. Guys like John Lee and Bill Timmons and a lot of these guys back then, um, uh, even Robert Atkins,
Yeah.
uh, they were out of the box trying to speak truth to power, and I've been following that mindset for again 25 years, and it's actually legit. It's totally legit. Like you can just uncover things that are what are the causal factors and help mitigate that. Like my wife and I only eat organic food. Let me tell you a really quick story. What you're talking about. Um, so a lady was coming in our office, who was doing really good, and she asked me if I worked with kids. I said, well, I'm raising kids and I have a football team. I've coached football 15 years, youth football. Love kids. Why? Oh, because they're trying to send my son home from school if I won't put him on Ritalin. That was a drug of choice back then for ADD, ADHD. And I said to her, well, do you think he has a Ritalin deficiency? And you're laughing kind of, but she didn't laugh. She got mad at me. I was just joking. Well, do you think he has a Ritalin deficiency? That would be like having an aspirin deficiency, why you have headaches and things. No, she said, can you help him or not? And I said, I don't know, but we could run some labs and see. That's how I work. Sure enough, found this kid had some food sensitivities and some other things going on, and changed changed a lot of stuff. I never even met the young. By the way, he was a 9-year-old that his school, not a doctor at the school, the principal and teacher were recommending a class 2 narcotic. And that's the same class as cocaine. And so yeah, recommending that to a 9-year-old, sure, that's good.
Well, I
Um,
mean, I just say this, but I smiled and almost laughed when you were saying that because I had the same story. I got diagnosed with ADD when and I was not the hyperactive kid. I was sort of the daydreamer kid, and they put
yeah,
me on medication. And it's interesting, nobody ever asked about deficiency, but I discovered that cannabis became my medicine. I gave up all the prescription medication. And
yeah,
if you think about it, there was a deficiency possibly in my endocannabinoid system. So
yeah,
I was able to find phytocannabinoids that matched with me, and I was able to excrete more of my endogenous endocannabinoids. So I balanced and created that homeostasis in me to reduce that. But what a great question. When you're prescribing these medications all the time, that's a great question. I never even thought about it. Do you have a
there's no
deficiency?
such thing as an aspirin deficiency or an Ambien deficiency. That's why not where you're not. Oh, you don't have enough Ambien in your cabinet. That's
It's
or you name
never
it.
enough Ambien.
Yeah, so, and when people ask me about certain, say, medications or, supplements even, hey, Reed, are mushrooms good?
Yeah.
I go, well, do you think you could have a mushroom deficiency? Not really. There's some elements in there that can be helpful to boost your immune system and maybe work to create some balance somewhere, but there's no such thing as a mushroom deficiency. It's the ingredients and things that are inside of it. Well, I'll just finish the story by saying that within 3 weeks after getting this kid's test results and explaining to the mom what she could do, I got a call. The principal of the school, who was prescribing medication without a license, tracked me down to the mom and said, "This is like a different kid, Mr. Davis. He's paying attention. He's not jumping up, yelling his head off, and he's not poking the other kids." And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. We're going to get every kid in the school come into our clinic. And then he blew it. He goes, "What'd you put him on?" He just wanted to know, was there something in a jar? I said, "Oh man, we put him on a better diet and sleep schedule and a better exercise schedule, and we used epigenetics, and that's all we use." We didn't even recommend one supplement at that time, but they're important. They can be helpful, and I can tell you why that everyone should be taking some.
Yeah, it's amazing to understand that people have these experiences and you're always trying to address a symptom instead of the root cause. I think I cut you off a little when you were explaining the process. So does somebody have to physically come into your clinic? And if so, or they can do this online with you? Like,
Yeah.
what is the process all the way through from the beginning to?
So if someone has a problem, something about the way they look or feel that they don't like, and they want to change it. So do you have a health problem that concerns you? Yes, I have migraine headaches. Okay, we want to know a few other questions like, how often that happens, how long has it been going on, what have they tried so far that hasn't
So
worked?
is that a conversation with somebody,
Yeah,
or is that
it's an onboarding conversation, and they're
got
always
it?
free. We just talk to people.
Right.
Number one, never tell anyone in therapy. I don't think it's ethical. Try this therapy, try that therapy, try my therapy. Here, try me, try me. No, I refuse to do that. Um, because it's just another way of guessing. If you don't know you could help a person, then you should never onboard them and take their money. We're fee for service. It's not covered by insurance. It's just out of pocket, and if people are willing to spend the money or not. So you have to weed through people sometimes. There's some people just aren't willing to invest in themselves. That's unfortunate for them. They can go and try other crap. They're actually spending more money than what we would even charge. But it is there is an onboarding, and there's an initial investment in laboratory work. But I would never, ever offer anyone those services if I didn't know or have very reasonable expectations that, yes, my program now I know will help you. What's your main complaint? How often body? How long has it been going on? We've tried so far. What does this mean to you? What would it be like if you didn't have that problem? What will it be like if you continue to have this problem? You have to know their motivating factors, get to know them. And are they willing to complete a program? Would there be anything to hold them back? That could be money, that could be time, that could be a spouse that doesn't think they should spend a dime, wasting your money and all that crap. Things that, so you have to investigate to see, is this a good candidate? Because we only want successful people, really, because they're going to have to pay me my fee, and they're going to have to pay for the labs, and it could be a substantial amount of money, for some people. Some people, nothing to it.
What's the role of mindset and just general mental well-being on the physical
Man,
aspects of it?
that's such a great question. So, have you ever talked to my buddy Ben Azadi? He's well known, and he's actually one of my former students, and he went off and has done some amazing things. But he calls it vitamin G. He was just on one of my programs. And by the way, we'd like to have you on our podcast,
Cool.
Len, if you would.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so he calls it vitamin G. Vitamin G is free. You get up every morning and you take a dose of vitamin G. Depending on what's going on throughout the day, you take another dose of vitamin G. Before you go to bed, you take a big dose of vitamin G. And it's simply gratitude. If you have an attitude of gratitude, not to sound corny, but that will get you through an awful lot. It'll lead to the solution. Just being positive. Is the cup half full or half empty? That should be one of our onboarding questions. But we can kind of tell from people's by the questions we do ask. We have medical history forms, lifestyle forms, and we have what we call the metabolic chaos scorecard. It's really fascinating. That tells us where they're at before we do the labs, or we won't do them. We won't really onboard people who aren't ready.
Yeah, I love that vitamin G. Absolutely, 100%. You have to counter everything with gratitude. I do have experiences with people that I think get into a pattern of enjoying their illness. I'm not sure if I'm even saying it correctly, and maybe there's a terminology for this, but it's people who get attention for not feeling well, so they get into this cycle, and it comes up as there's a mental mindset associated with that. And I don't know,
100%.
we talk about hypochondria. I don't know, not diagnosing anybody, but there's patterns. I talk to people all the time, like, how you doing? this is acting up again. This is so and
Yeah.
so, and it's ongoing. I'm like, oh, are you okay? Yeah, I'll be okay. I'm gonna take something. Like that. But they're in this cycle, and it's not about getting better. It's about maybe it's getting some of that love that they may have not been able to give themselves. They're trying to get it from other people, and they found that they can reinforce that by, hey, mommy used to give me some chicken soup when I didn't feel good. So, and that was my love that I'm getting. So maybe I
Yeah.
can get that from other people. Does that exist in
Well,
your
yeah, of course,
environment?
you know, people seek, I don't know if it's attention as much as they need, like you say, they need some love, man, and they'll get it any way that they can. And if it's talking about their owies and that gets them the love, problem is that doesn't go very far or last very long. You know, like when you see, like, I'm 71, I'll be 72 this year. And I got some buddies from high school I talk to. And if they start bringing up, I've got this and I've got that, and I'm seeing it, I go, hey, the end of conversation. I don't want to, I don't care. I don't want to, you got your problems, you know, and I'm in the business of helping. And they're not asking me for help. They're just lamenting, you know. So when you find yourself lamenting, and you're not like at least 80, I think there's something wrong with you, you know. Look, my mom's 94, and I had trouble getting a hold of her since Christmas. And I called my brother-in-law, lives around the corner. Hey, tell her to turn her phone. Anyway, today I finally talked to her. And how you doing, Mom? Oh, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I've got my artwork that I'm doing. She's 94, and she's helping write plays because in where she lives in a fairly fancy place, but still, it's just a bunch of old people. And but and I think that the reason they get there is because they have something going for them. I've got artwork here in the house. I've got her poetry. I have at least 6 poetry books on my living room coffee table. This is my mother's little shrine here to my mom, her poetry books that she read. So it's you have to have, you know, even though she will talk about her kidneys or something, you know, it's more like she wants to talk about she actually at 94 wants a date, you know.
Good for her.
My my dad died maybe 15. He was 85, and that's pretty good for
Yeah.
old guy who smoked all the time and drank
Yeah.
way too much without a good reason. And so, you know, anyway, 90. So I think that gratitude and that point of view and all that is like half the battle.
Yeah.
It's like just show up
Sure.
to do something and get it done, you know, like that's
Yeah.
the other.
Mindset's a big thing. I agree. All right. So I have some questions I ask my guests, music related stuff, if you
Oh
don't
yeah,
mind.
okay.
Do you remember, and if so, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Oh man. I saw the play Hair
Uh,
in Chicago in 1968. It came off Broadway and went to Chicago first. I think that was the first real, I would almost call it a concert
yeah.
because it's a musical play. But I saw all kinds of people. I've seen the Grateful Dead way back when, and you know, I never saw the Stones, but a lot of great acts. Always been a blues fan.
Yeah.
So anything to do with blues and rhythm and blues.
Well,
A
do you
blues fan.
remember? Do you remember the last concert you attended?
Oh yeah, I saw Elton John. He was here in San Diego for his final tour, you know. He
Yeah.
actually said he played, and I got great seats for me and my wife and my brother-in-law and sister were visiting from Florida. We had the sushi dinner right down by the stadium and walked over. What a great concert that was. I've seen everything from Michael Bublé to actually the last concert I went to was at Red Rock Amphitheater outside of Denver, and it was Joe Bonamassa,
I
who's
just
my
saw Joe Bonamassa at the
you're
Big
kidding.
Potato in Studio City. Yeah.
Yeah, what an
Last
amazing
week.
concert that was. Took my son, who we rented motorcycles in Denver. We flew to Denver, rented motorcycles, stayed next to the amphitheater at the Origin Hotel, and then saw that the next morning we rode 400 miles to Sturgis for
Oh,
5 days.
I
Yeah, what?
Sturgis.
Yeah, we're doing stuff like that. So yeah, Joe Bonamassa was actually the last
Amazing.
concert.
Yeah, he was great. And I saw the Elton John tour at Dodger Stadium. in LA too. So it was an
Yeah.
amazing show. So I agree with you.
He said he'd played in California. I played 235 concerts just in California
Yeah,
alone.
yeah,
That's one touring guy,
amazing.
and he still bangs it out.
Yeah, but I'm a big blues guy too. So
Yeah, I've
Kingfish,
seen BB
Opanamasa.
King, and yeah, his one of his very last concerts. I think he was 80 something. I saw that in Cleveland at some little almost private theater thing, and yes, I love music. I can't name everything,
Uh,
but
just one more since you brought BB King, and then I'll ask you the next question. But I saw a concert, Little Richard, the Reverend Al Green, and BB King. And
yeah,
Little Richard, they turned the lights off, and he can't really walk, couldn't really walk at that time really well. So they had him in a walker. They didn't want anybody to see, and they put him in the piano, and he wasn't using his feet. But man, he was fantastic. Just still
yeah,
going and
yeah,
talking and great. And Al Green, he still gave out roses to the ladies in the audience, and BB King
yeah.
would tell these stories.
That would be an amazing concert. Yeah, yeah. Those are heroes.
Yeah.
Just can't
All
get
right.
better than that.
So another music question. For the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to name the actual title of the album. It could be, Joe Bonamassa as an example.
Yeah.
But what would be those 5 albums?
Oh man, you really put me on the spot here. I don't do albums anymore. You just so used to Spotify.
Yeah.
I still love Eric Clapton,
Mhm.
like Layla, stuff like that. That was a great one. Um, and even I mean, I love 10 Years After, which is more rock and roll, but he did some blues. Alvin Lee wrote some amazing blues tunes. Um, and circle around those guys, and you got me. A lot of them are dead now, so they're not making any new albums. But I could listen to BB King all day long. Yeah. And I liked. I even liked Bob Dylan, some of his stuff. I liked some of the Beach Boys stuff. Uh, um, I would say British blues. Jimi Hendrix was my favorite for a couple decades for sure. Kind of faded off a bit now, but um, yeah, I don't get high and listen to music anymore. I quit smoking weed, so I it's kind of a different level
It's
of
time to start again.
yeah. But hey, you know what? Every now and then, do a couple gummies or something.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So, final question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Well, my brother and I had twin beds in a room growing up. Well, I was 13 before I got my own room, but I had a set of drums in there. I called it a record player. I used to draw a lot, so I would put my own artwork on the walls and stuff. I have a head I did of Jimi Hendrix that I wish I still had that. It was really amazing. Um, so yeah, artwork and set of drums. Um, you know, I didn't have any big toys or anything like that. No, I would say just that and curtains. Your mom puts up the curtains, and
Yeah.
that's what you get.
Reek, where can people find out more about you, what you do, engage with you, anything
Well,
else you want to
we're
share?
we're called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition,
Mhm.
and you can always look that up. It's very, very common, very popular. Let me see if my crew gave me a special URL. Yeah, let's do this. So, um, everyone knows this as FDN. There's FDN practitioners all over the world now. We're in 50 countries. So fdntraining.com/May for
Okay,
you, May. Yeah,
cool.
so fdntraining.com/May, and we'll have a gift there. It's probably going to be a step, something about our step-by-step guide, how you can take control of your health and not rely on medication and surgery and all the evil bad deed doers.
Amazing. And are you on all the social under FDN?
FDN training,
Thrive?
FDN training, depending on which, I think that's FDN training is Instagram. I'm not the marketer.
That's
I-
fine. We'll link it. We'll link it
Yeah.
everywhere. It's
I tend to, I do public relations, of course. I do public speaking
Yeah.
things, but remember, for me, high tech was a pager and a fax machine. That was oh man, high tech pagers.
I remember those days.
I remember my BlackBerry,
Yeah.
what happened to my BlackBerry?
I had one of those too.
So I'm not the tech guy. I don't know I couldn't even spell IBM back in the day.
And for my audience, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and listening and staying with us. I hope this was an educational episode, as it was for me. And thank you so much for all the wonderful reviews and 5 stars, 4 star, whatever it is. Just keep leaving them. And thank you for buying my book and engage with my content. I really appreciate it. Reed, I want to say, really fascinating episode. I love what you're doing. I mean, this is the future of healthcare. It's not sick care. It's actually healthcare. It's trying to find the root cause of what's making people feel not well and addressing that instead of like addressing just the symptoms. So I appreciate what you do. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks to you. Keep up your great work.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.